This is a manga I thought up. My theme this time was to combine like J-pop idols with horror, basically. So I thought it'd be really cool to see like a kind of idol death game manga. We ended up having this PV up on the Onoden board in Akihabara, which was a huge dream come true of mine, especially in having in a place like Akihabara that's like the center of the anime and manga world.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Linnea. Thank you so much for coming.
Yay, thanks for inviting me.
You're a mangaka and illustrator, freelance, but also working with a studio in Tokyo, where you've been now living, I think, for a little over 3 years. You've done a lot of work. We have some of your personal work, Idol Royale, which you're going to talk about in a little bit, and some more manga and illustrations that you've done. Super curious about this world. And before we dive into that, I'm curious about what brought you to Japan 3 years ago, even though the answer seems pretty obvious in front of us.
Yeah, so the main reason I moved here was just to increase my work opportunities, because I worked as an illustrator for years in America, but opportunity-wise, if you really want to like specifically do Japanese anime and manga or like that kind of style, a lot of times studios in the US will be like, oh, this is too Japanese, like can you make it a bit more Western style, like drawing or whatever. So you can do illustration with like anime style stuff because it is like popular there as well, but I just realized I wasn't getting as many job opportunities, so I mainly came here to pursue my dreams of making manga or anime or illustrating and all that kind of stuff and getting involved in that.
Is this something you grew up with that you kind of always wanted to do, and you kind of thought to yourself like, oh, you were reading manga maybe when you were a teenager, and then when growing up you were like, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I started reading manga from a very young age, like maybe 10 or 11 years old. I think the anime and manga boom like just started to become big as I was like growing up, especially with the internet. Like a lot more content could be shared, I think, than compared to the past. So yeah, I started getting really into all that stuff and like searching for like anime and manga, like kind of content myself on the internet too. And yeah, it wasn't really as popular around that time, so it was kind of hard to find the things I liked, but yeah, I mean, it's gotten more and more popular now, so it's very easy, but that is basically what made me want to start this. So I've been drawing manga since I was very young. A lot of times it would just be like weird comics or something in my sketchbook that I would do first, but over time I tried to learn to make more professional work and figure out, okay, what kind of tools and stuff do they use and like how does it actually work? And in the end, I ended up studying cartooning as well at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. They're a little bit more focused on Western comics, but I did learn a lot of good like art fundamentals and like comic fundamentals there, which helped me a lot. So yeah, that was kind of my path and that led me there. Did illustration, now I'm here. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about that because you are obviously doing Japanese style manga, and this is something you've been wanting to do, but are there opportunities to study this in the United States, to do this professionally, or is it mostly through self-studying with a kind of arts fundamentals you can get at the university?
Yeah, when I was growing up, there was nothing that, like, there was no way to get an education like that. I think if I was to redo it again, I probably would have gone to Senmon Gakko in Japan instead, like go to language school, then Senmon Gakko, and then study that way. But I kind of did the closest thing I could to do that in the US, which was studying cartooning at the like university I went to, because it's one of the only schools, or at least it was in the US, that offered like comic specific like curriculum basically. So I think going to art school was still really helpful because like a lot of art fundamentals you still really need when you do anime and manga, because anime and manga is basically semi-realism with like deforme, where they like deform the faces and stuff to make it look more cute. So you have to like know basics of anatomy, color, like all that kind of stuff really well to do manga well, I think. So it was still very helpful in that way.
You differentiated Western cartoon and Japanese manga. If you had to define the difference, when you look at them side by side, obviously you see a different style, but also is there like a official definition of each and where they kind of get separated?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of like an argument in like different communities because people don't really know how to define them actually. A lot of people define Western cartoons or comics compared to Japanese anime and manga is like, oh, this was made in America, so it's Western, or like the West or whatever, any Western countries, and then this was made in Japan, so this is Japanese anime and manga. But that's not necessarily true, right? Because there's like anime kind of hybrid shows being made in America, and there's also like kind of more Western style looking anime that's being made in Japan. So the lines can be a little bit blurry, I think, but in my opinion, what anime and manga is to me is an art form where you can study it, kind of like, for example, martial arts or something. You can study in this art form to learn how to do this specific form of art. That's especially true like for anime and manga because there's certain processes that they follow to create things that look like it or make content that looks like this art form, and you really have to study a lot to get to that point, I think. Especially anime is like an art form that's been formed since like around World War II or before, where it's been developed over many, many years, and if you don't follow the processes that they use to make anime, it doesn't look like anime. And I feel that way about manga in a lot of ways too, so I think you really have to study that specific art form if you want your things to look like anime and manga.
You graduated then from a university in New York, and you started working in that field, but you're like, not enough opportunities. I want to do this in Japan. What are the pathways for young graduates in the United States or elsewhere in the West that have this desire to become an animator or mangaka in Japan and to kind of move here professionally?
Yeah, so what I highly recommend doing first, if you're really like seriously considering this path, is getting fluent in Japanese, because if you don't know Japanese, you end up like limiting your opportunities a lot if you want to come to Japan. I've known some people who are lucky who are able to kind of navigate without Japanese because they can either have like the company sponsoring them help them or have like translators, things like that. So that can happen, but if you're not here yet and you don't want to risk that, I'd highly recommend studying Japanese. And it's also a good way to get in Japan if you're still overseas too, because the way I got in was through going to like Japanese language school first. And a lot of people think that they can only really get a visa for Japan if they have a company sponsor them or they become an English teacher or something, but that's not necessarily true. I think language school is a really good opportunity and a really good option if you can do that. So that way you can learn Japanese, and then a lot of language schools will also help you find work or help you prepare for like work life in Japan. So it opens up the types of jobs you can do way more, I think. So yeah, I recommend that. And then aside from that, actually getting into the industry, you really just kind of have to network and meet people. The way I got my job currently in the anime industry is I actually met Belle at a beach party because she was already working at the company that I ended up joining.
So Belle, who's currently behind the camera and who we're going to interview next.
Yes. So I met Belle at a party with a bunch of our other friends, and I ended up getting my current job because of that, because she was like, oh, you can draw really well, so you should try to apply for the company I'm at, basically. Yeah.
I can imagine it's super competitive, because also a lot of young Japanese students probably dream of getting into this industry. And maybe my perspective on this is wrong, but I can imagine that since it's a Japanese art form, there is not necessarily like a plus point coming from the West, and speaking English is not something that they need as a skill when drawing Japanese style characters in animation.
Right.
What was it like for you then moving from New York to Japan and finally being here and kind of starting your dream and chasing your mangaka and animator career?
Yeah, I mean, when I first moved to Japan, it was like, I mean, of course, I was very happy. Like, I think the first few months I was in Japan was like the happiest I've been in a long time, because I was just like, oh, I'm finally like kind of going more towards my dreams and things like that. So yeah, I really enjoy being here, and I still do, of course. But sorry, what was the rest of your question again?
Like what kind of challenges, how was it for you to adapt to life here?
I think adapting to life here, the hardest parts are just like figuring out your visa situations and like the paperwork and getting all of that set up. I think a lot of foreigners who live in Japan complain about this, but it's hard to get a phone number and then an address and then all this other stuff if you don't have, or a bank account if you don't have one of the other three. So you kind of have to do some weird navigations to get around that until you get everything set up. So the beginning is a little bit like troublesome with figuring all that stuff out, but once you do, it's not as hard anymore, I think, as you kind of like get used to the systems and things like that. And yeah, other than that, I think because I already like was conversational in Japanese by the time I came here, it honestly wasn't that hard. Like I could get everything I needed to, or like figure out what I needed to without any problems, or get an apartment or whatever. Yeah.
So you got your first opportunity to kind of dive into the industry through networking, through Bell. How different was it when you kind of joined the studio and started working professionally in Japan compared to the work you were doing back in the United States?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's completely different because in the US, I was basically just working as a freelancer. So I was just at home every day drawing. So I think the flexibility is nice, but it's also a little bit lonely because I didn't really like have artists that I was around, and it can be a little bit demotivating, I think, when you're just like kind of by yourself working. So when I came to Japan, it really felt like, I don't know, like I had more of a place that I belonged in. Like there was a big like artist kind of community of animators and people who draw manga and all these kinds of things. I've been able to meet a lot of like really interesting people. And I think that's really motivating for my art and gives me a lot more energy to make art because I want to like participate in these communities more. Like, for example, there's a comic market. Like I try to participate in pretty much every year as much as I can. And yeah, for those who don't know what comic market is, it's just a huge comic market, basically. It's where like thousands of artists go to sell their either original works or fan works or like handmade things or anything like that. So
do I imagine this like at the big convention center, like Tokyo Big Sight?
Yes, it's at Tokyo Big Sight, okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so you have like many people with their booths and they have their manga, like yourself. You brought one of your kind of original stories and you can kind of sell it to a lot of people that visit.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So for you, it was also a way to find a community and mingle with other artists, other creators, and then kind of, I imagine, also level up your skill, learn from them, and kind of continually work on your craft.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about the process of making a manga. Is this standardized? You mentioned earlier that there are specific ways of drawing and animating that have been done for decades in Japan, and you need to follow those procedures. If we talk, let's say, about a manga, let's take yours as an example here. To make this from start to finish, is there like a specific process that you need to follow, or can you do it however you like?
So I think there are artists who will like kind of do things a little bit differently. It really depends on the person, but I always just try to follow like the standard process of making manga as much as possible. And for manga, it's a lot simpler than anime because you don't need a lot of people to make it. It's just like one person usually themselves making it. So the way that the process usually goes for me is I'll write the story and characters, make character sheets, make storyboards, which are like basically the rough layouts of the manga with the dialogue and everything. And that kind of gives a picture of like how I want the story to flow and things like that. I'll usually edit it from there and like share it with people and kind of get their impressions. And then finally you can actually like draw the finished pages. So the finished pages have pretty much always been drawn with like certain types of pens and ink, and people use the same tools for most manga series. Some people use different ones, but it's a little bit different now too because a lot of people work digitally now as well. So there is that difference, but it'll still kind of like have a similar feel as if to like someone is drawing it by hand because they usually use certain brushes that kind of imitate like the hand-drawn tools. So there's still like that part of it as well, but yeah.
You said you start by writing the story and creating your character. So in a way, as if you would write a novel.
Yeah.
But then you have to decide how you want to show this, right? And if you picture a manga, if we take this is maybe easier to see, we have a large page here. You have to choose. You may have like a whole paragraph or two of what is happening in the scene, but you have to choose how you represent this, right? So we have a page here where you have multiple illustration. So as typical in Japan, it's read from right to left, top down.
Yep.
First of all, are there any rules for the boxes and the illustration sizes? I remember growing up and reading a manga like Dragon Ball or One Piece, and are there rules for how big they can be, how much text can be in one? I don't think I've ever seen this kind of style where they kind of all overlay and are in each other?
Yeah, so this kind of style is more typical of like kind of shoujo manga in general. Like that's where you'll usually kind of see these types of layouts more. It's a little bit more like free flowing, I guess, and not as rigid. But the way that I usually structure my pages when I'm creating manga is each page is like a paragraph. So you'll have like some kind of point you're trying to make on each page or a way that you're trying to move the story forward because every chapter of a manga is only 20 to 40 pages, right? So you can't have any information that is unnecessary. So you have to be telling something with the story for every single page you have. So usually what the biggest panel will be on the page is the main center or focus of that paragraph, basically. Like it'll be the main point. So on this page, for example, the main thing that I want to show is her being excited that she passed an Idol audition. So I tried to show that with the expression and her looking at her phone and being excited about that. And every other panel is smaller because it just leads up to that moment, basically. So the first one is her running into the hallway, taking a breath and then sitting down, and then you see her face. So that is the main point. So it's almost like each page, not necessarily always true, but a lot of pages of manga will have their own little story on each page where it's like beginning, running, middle, taking a breath, and then end, or like the main point is like her expression looking at her phone. So
are there any conventions for how many kind of panels you can have maximum on a page, or is this also kind of up to your own choosing?
This is kind of up to each person, but the general rule is that you shouldn't have more than around 7 to 8 panels per page because then it ends up being hard to read and a bit like overcrowded. Some people can be, if they're more experienced, can be a bit avant-garde and like do like really crazy paneling. But I think from what I've seen, it's actually better to have more simple paneling and more complex illustrations or panels because that'll actually like flow a bit better because you want the structure of the actual pages to be easy to read. If it's hard to read, then a lot of times readers will get frustrated and be like, oh, I don't know where I'm supposed to read next. Like, what's going on? Like, it should flow pretty seamlessly. So that way that doesn't happen because you don't want people to get frustrated. And then it's like, okay, now I'm like out of the story. Like, I'm not engrossed anymore. So you have to be careful with the layout in that way.
Here, I also see on this page, I don't know which camera is best to show. I'll maybe just show it on the one that's pointing at my face right now. But you have like the full bleed at the top and at the bottom here, and then you've got like small boxes in kind of contrast. So it gives a nice balance. Is there a specific meaning for you as an illustrator to kind of swap out the different sizes and styles, or like do you feel like it adds to the story to cut it out like this?
Yeah, so the main reason I do that is just giving variety just makes it more interesting overall to read. So if every page looks the same, it kind of gets boring or repetitive. So you always want to like surprise people a bit or catch people off guard. So I think that adding a lot of variety in like which panels are the biggest or smallest on each page helps a lot, and trying to make each page have a little bit of a different structure will help with that as well. With the one you showed before, I usually lay out my storyboards with like the double page spreads in mind. So the largest one at the top and then the smaller one at the bottom, and then it's reversed on the next page, kind of looks nice overall as a spread. So I keep that in mind too as I'm laying out the pages, like how they look together and things like that.
So you write the full story, and then you have to start thinking about how you illustrate it. So you will lay out and you will make your storyboard, and you will make kind of the general storyboard and panels for the whole manga.
Yeah.
How much time does that take? You've got like, I don't know how many pages we have here in the story, but it's a lot.
Yeah, this one was quite a long-term project that I just worked on little by little. I started it in 2020 and I finished working on that full volume in 2024, so it took around 3-4 years, which is quite a long time. Like usually if you're a professional, it shouldn't take that long, but I pretty much only have time to work on this after work, so it will take me a bit longer. My pace right now is usually I get one page done in about or I get 1.5 pages done every week, basically. So I can get one chapter of a manga done within about a half a year is usually around the time it takes, which is about 40 pages, 20 to 40 pages.
So this is one chapter? No, this is multiple chapters in one volume.
Yeah, that's 4 chapters in total.
Is this always usually this kind of format and this size? So like 4 chapters into one book?
Yeah, so usually it'll be around maybe 4 to, 6 or 8 chapters. It really depends on like how long each chapter is. Some magazines serialize like 20 something pages a week or month or something like that. So then one volume will have like many more chapters, but like a lot of shoujo magazines will be maybe 40 to 50 pages. So there will be a lot less chapters in one book because one book is around usually 200-ish pages. So as long as it fills up that much space, that's usually what they print.
So this was kind of like your personal project that you've been wanting to do for a long time, Idol Royale. Can you tell me about this? What kind of started the idea for this, and also what kind of genre would you say, or would you categorize this manga in?
Yeah, so this is a manga I thought up because I was trying to figure out a story that I wanted to combine like some of my favorite things. So my theme this time was to combine like J-pop idols with horror, basically. So I thought it'd be really cool to see like a kind of idol death game manga, especially because the death game genre has been popular recently as well. And I'm into that kind of stuff as well. I think it's really interesting. So I wanted to see what would happen if you combine the two.
So like the Hunger Games or like Alice in Borderland.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Like Last Man Standing kind of. So
exactly, yeah. So that's the concept that I tried for. And the like blurb of the manga is basically to become the top idol, she has to kill the other competitors. So that is the
well, that will get you to the top, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's nobody else left, you win.
Yes.
When you write this, do you write this for yourself, or did you have like an audience in mind?
I guess I do mainly write it for myself, but I do have like a social media audience, so I'll usually share my posts and like enjoy the comments that I get back on each episode. When I was working on Idol Royale, I would post maybe like 4 pages at a time or so, and then see the feedback from that, and it's always really interesting to see like what others thought too.
So this is an interesting thing, right? You said you posted 4 pages at a time, which means that if you're a fan and you're reading this, you kind of have to wait week after week. And I think also for the big mangas, people wait every month or every 2 weeks that a new one is being released. And it's a very, very slow progress.
It is,
and then for people that want to collect those, you have to have a huge library space to have all of the One Piece or all of the Dragon Ball and so on. Is this like an industry thing here in Japan, that this is just a way it's designed to work so that there are constant releases? How does it work when you're like behind the scenes working at the studio?
Well, yeah, sure. So this is all indie, so I get to like decide my own schedule and that kind of stuff. So I don't really have to worry about deadlines as much. But if someone's working at a studio, they do have to do like a certain amount of pages a month to like keep their serialization going. So luckily for me, since I have a little bit more freedom, if I don't have time during a certain period to work on something, I can push things aside a bit. But yeah, I mean, some people think that the schedule for mangaka is quite tough too, because you have to put out so much work to keep people interested and like keep episodes coming out. So, I mean, if you're used to working fast, then I think you kind of just get into a rhythm of it. And I feel like that's the same for me as well. Like it's just kind of become a habit. So I don't really think too much about it if I'm working on it every day. But
so for you, if you're working on your own project, this is something I can imagine you would love to present at one of those comic markets. You would go. What are the other avenues for young mangaka to publish their personal work and maybe get kind of noticed or picked up? You mentioned magazines. Can you like just submit this to a magazine and maybe they'll pick it up?
Yeah, that can happen too. You can submit your works to magazines in Japan. A lot of times they have newcomer contests. So you can submit usually a one-shot, which is like a 20 to 40 page story. And they'll see the quality from it and see, oh, is this person ready to be published or not? And if you're not, a lot of times they'll actually give like very detailed feedback from the editors, which is really nice. I've done that actually from America, where I sent some of my one-shot manga to magazines in Japan. And a while after, they would send like a huge envelope with feedback for your work. So they'll have a side for the art and a side for like the story writing, and tell you which parts you need to improve if you want to like have work that's quality enough to be published. So I think that's really cool. Luckily, there's a lot more options now too online, of course. There's a website where you can publish like one-shot manga on there, and editors are often seeing the work on there, and sometimes they will choose something to be published or like try to contact the author to like get more work from them too. So I think like for a lot of people overseas, that's become like a big, like really good option for them to try as well. And that's something I post to as well from time to time. But the editors will also like give feedback and be like, okay, these parts are good, but you can also improve on these parts. So I think it's really nice to have that feedback and yeah, just keep improving work and try to submit. In terms of other ways to get published, there's also a silent manga audition, which is like a international manga contest from a certain magazine. I don't remember which one it was specifically, but those are looking for international like artists, and they usually try to like train them, and sometimes they'll be even brought to Japan to like train as mangaka too. So there's a lot of options.
It's really impressive to hear that editors will take time to actually provide extensive feedback to applicants to like a contest, because I can imagine they must receive a lot of applications.
Yes.
But that feedback is probably invaluable for you, even if you don't get selected, because you can see, oh, I can improve this and this and this.
It's really impressive. Like that really surprised me in Japan when I submitted my work, because that doesn't happen in the US. They do never send you feedback. Basically, if you send your work in, it will basically be lost in the void if they're not interested. So yeah, I really like that they do like take all that time to send feedback and help like artists develop their work and stuff like that.
What kind of feedback have you gotten when you submitted your first things that really kind of helped you refine your style and take your drawings to the next level?
Yeah, so well, there's a couple of things. One from a long time ago was when I was like around college or a little bit after, I actually drew in a style that was too old for like current manga. And I think this is actually a common issue for people who are not from Japan, or like maybe not from Asian countries, because they probably get the same content at the same time as Japan in general. But when I was in America and still there, actually a lot of the anime manga culture is a bit behind Japan. It's not as current. I think it's changing because of social media a bit, but that's still the case. Like, for example, if you ask a lot of people their favorite anime from like Western countries, they'll say maybe something like Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, Dragon Ball Z. Those series are very old now. They're like very old considered in Japan. And the style, if you try to draw in a style that mimics that, it's going to look very old-fashioned. So if you want to be a published mangaka, you have to keep with the current trends as much as possible and keep your style as current as possible. So when I realized, when editor told me, oh, your style is old-fashioned, you should try to modernize it more, I really worked hard to study like newer artists and kind of absorb their style more into mine. And now I don't get that feedback anymore. So I think I've done it successfully for the most part. And working in anime helps with that a lot too, because I'm constantly working on the newest shows. So you're always drawing like the newest, most popular kind of anime styles. So that helps train me a lot as well. But yeah, you really have to like be careful of that kind of stuff, I think, if you're not from Japan.
Let's talk about the styles. What kind of styles are there, and how do you see it? If we take, for example, your illustration here, are the ways the hair is done, the eyes are drawn, kind of part of a style? Can you recognize the manga genre by how it's drawn?
Yes, you can actually. So for shonen manga, for example, a lot of times they will use a lot of blacks, a lot of thick, like usually thicker lines, because they draw with a thicker pen normally. And they will also use more action lines, less toning, which is like a gray tone. Shoujo manga, for example, uses much thinner lines, and they use more gray tone, like kind of sparkly effects, things like that. And yeah, the lines will be a lot more lightweight and pretty looking, basically. And what I draw is actually yuri manga, which is a genre of manga that focuses on basically relationships that girls have with other girls, and like more like lesbian focused, I guess, kind of stories, or the romance will be focused on that. So the way that these manga are usually drawn is it's kind of like very highly detailed, and the girls will be drawn very beautifully. So the way I draw my manga is to kind of represent that style, basically.
How much work goes into just making this one panel that you're holding up here? We have four illustrations. I can see the eyes are very detailed. A lot of strokes went into kind of making the emotion come out.
Yeah.
So how much work goes into this?
Yeah, so the sketch will take me, like the pencil sketch will take me about an hour or two. Then the inks will take me, like the line art will take me 3 to 5 hours on average. So it'll usually be like a smaller panel like this will be 30 minutes and maybe 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, I would say. Something like that.
And this is a very specific type of paper.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So this is manga paper. You can tell that it's manga paper because it has like these rulers and edges on the all around the borders, and there's also an inner border. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's an inner border here, and what those are bleed lines. So when you go to print your manga, you'll need to make sure that you draw with a certain amount of bleed. Otherwise, your art can get cut off when it goes to print, which is very unfortunate. So if you draw enough bleed, then even if your art gets cut off at a certain point, you won't lose any important things. Like, for example, all the speech balloons should always be within the bleed lines. So that way it never gets cut off by the printer. Because otherwise, if it's outside the bleed line, you might have your text get cropped off, which is very unfortunate. And then, yeah, like they can't read the whole sentence or whatever. So
that actually brings up a couple more questions about this specifically, the speech balloons. You need to think about them beforehand, right? You need to think about where do I put them and how big do I make them?
Yeah.
How do you decide on that? Also, specifically because I know, for example, your own manga, you have it in Japanese and English.
Yeah.
If you want to think about translation, the text length might be completely different too.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so the unfortunate thing with translating something from Japanese to English is Japanese can be written with way fewer moji, like words, characters. Yeah. So it's actually way easier to fit more information on a Japanese manga page than it can on a manga page that's in English. So many times when manga gets translated into English, these balloons end up becoming a bit overcrowded because of that. And unfortunately, there's not really much you can do about that aside from making the text smaller, because that's just like how the language is, right? You could try to like abbreviate certain things, but like to keep the original intention of the text, like a lot of times they just kind of have to do their best to fit everything on the page. But yeah, in terms of choosing the size, I mean, a lot of it's just intuitive at this point. If like I know there's going to be more text in here because I already wrote it beforehand, I'll make the balloon a bit bigger. And then if it's like smaller, then I'll just make a smaller balloon. If it's just like maybe they're sighing or I don't know, doing it's like a very small like sentence or something like that.
You need to be very decisive also as a text, I guess, because if you're writing just a novel and you're having a conversation between two characters and you want to change the dialogue, you just cut the text and you make it shorter and it doesn't make a difference. But here, if suddenly you want to make this character say something slightly different that ends up being longer, you need to redraw the whole thing.
Or that's true, yeah. Although you don't necessarily have to redraw it all, because if that happened, I would probably just have the same page and then I fix it up digitally, so I could just make the balloon a little bit bigger digitally, and then it's fine. So
you start with this paper always, kind of as a working sheet. You mentioned the bleed lines as a reference for printing.
Yeah.
So if you're an independent and you want to print something like your own manga here, what do you do with those? Where can you go and print this, and how does the printing process look like?
Yeah, so in Japan, luckily, there's a lot of really good printing companies in general. I had quite a hard time with this in the US because like doujinshi or self-published kind of culture doesn't exist as much. But in Japan, there's tons and tons of like companies and services to like print your own manga. And of course, they're making Japanese manga too, so you can make like a more authentic, like full book if you want to. But if you go to a printing company, you just make sure that you have everything scanned with the bleed lines and make sure that there's enough room on the edges. And they'll usually have their own templates on the website as well. So if you want, you can just upload the pages to the templates that they already have. And just put in a PDF and then print it. And then usually as long as you set everything up fine, then it should be fine and it'll print well.
So you'll have to take those drawings that you've made by hand and then redo them digitally or scan them beforehand and submit them.
Yeah, I just scan, and I also like do some touch-ups digitally. So I'll add gray toning, which will add some like effects and shading and things like that on the computer. I add the text. I'll usually often like fix the line art a bit as well. If there's like small mistakes I made or things like details I want to add, I will also add that as well. So yeah, in the end, I'll always have a digital page that I can print. So
are modern mangas still all made on paper first, or are some of them now basically a pure digital product?
Yeah, so a lot of mangaka are pure digital now. A lot of people will do the full process digitally for all of their work. And I actually, for my other manga, Idol Royale, it is all digital as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this was my first traditional project in a while because I used to draw all my manga traditionally, but then like I started doing it digitally just because I thought it would be easier or faster. But I actually find that drawing by hand sometimes can be faster because you can't constantly like fix things all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So I found that actually to be very helpful. So I ended up switching back to traditional for that reason. And also because I'm doing anime work during the day, I do all of that work on a like tablet or iPad or whatnot. So it's just I'm looking at screens all day, and I don't really want to look at screens more when it's like late at night and I'm like working on my own stuff. So I find it a lot more relaxing to just work on things on paper.
Is this the whole story here? The on all these
I think
papers?
it's most of it. Some of them some of them are blank pages, but I do have most of the manga here.
That's really cool. So you brought up a couple of times now some of your animation work, and you work at this studio as well. How do you balance this, and how different is it for you to kind of draw a manga that is to be animated, whereas that is to be kind of static on print on paper?
There are a couple of key differences. While manga, you're basically drawing like the sequence of the story, just one frame. Of course, for animation, you have to draw several frames to make the characters move. So that was something like I kind of had to learn as working in anime because I didn't really have experience with that before I started working in the anime industry, and I've kind of just learned over time like how to kind of transition into that. And I found it's actually not too difficult as long as you already know how to draw the kind of style that's required for anime and manga. So as long as you do that and make sure to learn like the animation fundamentals and things like that, then I feel like, I'm still kind of drawing the same types of characters or like similar feeling, but I guess they do feel a bit different because of that.
Is there a different approach in terms of how? I mean, here you go from one panel to the next, and it's like a, how can I say, abrupt transition. You just switch the camera angle and you show something different.
Yeah.
In the anime, there will be like movement. There will be a transition. Do you have to take this into consideration? Also into because at the basis of this is a story, and the story could be for the manga or for the anime, but the way it's being shown is going to be different, right? So
Right.
Do you approach this differently then?
Well, yeah, there is a different approach to it in that way. To explain a bit more about like my anime work, my title specifically is as a Sakuga Kantoku, which means that you're a keyframe director. So what that means is that you're fixing the animation to make sure that all the animation looks consistent and that the style looks like good and the drawings look good throughout the whole show. So I'm not like thinking about the story and things like that as much because that's more of the job of the like director Kantoku and Enshutsu, who's a assistant director. So I don't really have to think about the storytelling as much in that way. I just have to make sure that the drawings themselves look good. Whereas if I'm working on my own manga, I do have to think about the storytelling more because I'm the original creator. So it does feel quite different as well because of that.
So in your manga, this is your project. So you do all the drawings. I imagine you keep your style consistent. If you work on an anime project, I can imagine there's multiple people making illustrations for different sections of something.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure they're all kind of aligned and
Yes,
done in
exactly.
the same style. How does it work when you have to draw something or supervise? In your case, you kind of drawing a third party's image of a character, but you have to make it exactly how they want it, and everyone has to be able to make that the same way.
Yeah, so, well, it's not too difficult because you'll always have a lot of sete, which is just like the character sheets, like uniforms, clothes, like what the characters are wearing, a lot of props and stuff. So with the sete, everyone can draw the characters pretty consistently as long as they're following this. And the sete is always done by the main like character designer of the show. So everyone who is a Sakuga Kantoku is just like following as much as possible closer to the sete to make sure that all the animations feel consistent. So yeah, like you said, a lot of the animators or the main animators, they will like all have a little bit different styles. So if it was just left as it is, it like the show wouldn't feel consistent overall. Like the art style would be changing a lot. So you have to make sure that everything stays consistent. And I hope that my art's consistent. Sometimes I feel like it's not because I'm like, oh, I drew this character one way on this page and it looks completely different on this page. So I have to like make character sheets for myself too to try to stay as consistent as possible. But yeah, I think it's a little bit easier when it's just like one person working on something too.
What goes into a character sheet? How do I imagine that? Is it like a one-page document and it's a character under different angles? Or
Yes.
do you get like a description of many details about this character?
Well, yeah, you can get some description sometimes if you like read the original work that the work is based off of. Well, for example, the show that's coming out next month that I'm working on, Watanare, is like another like kind of Yuri anime show or like slice of life comedy. So the characters are all really detailed and they have a lot of sete for the show. So they will have each character at different angles, full body, like all the head turns of the characters, like how they look at from all different angles. They have like all this kind of information to help all the artists be able to keep this consistent basically.
I'm terrible at drawing. So even if I had that sheet, I can imagine I would not be able to replicate because I mean, here you have a character, we've used this page a lot, but slightly different angles, the hair moved because the character turned a little bit. There's so many patterns or scenarios where the character can be in that keeping it consistent is still seems very difficult.
Yes,
all the emotions the character might express, which is what makes like the whole story, right? Kind of bringing the characters to life. It takes years to learn, right? You need to really be dedicated to get into this.
Yeah, I think especially for people starting out, it might be hard to stay consistent because they're probably improving their art even more. So I think what happens to a lot of people is that they'll start working on a project if they do some manga or try to do that. They'll start working on a project and see the first few pages, and then by the end of the project their art will look completely different because they've improved since the beginning, and they'll be like, oh no, now I have to like redo these beginning pages because now my art has like developed so much. I'm still developing my art, but it's not quite at that point where I have such a inconsistency, but I know that's like a big struggle as well. I think it probably was for me more when I was in college or around that age, but yeah, it can be quite difficult.
Making manga professionally, I imagine, makes you look at other people's work, or when you buy manga for your own leisure, and you look at it completely differently now, right? Are you able to still enjoy the stories in the same way, or do you notice all the details of how something was drawn and, oh, I could do this in my story next time? Or...
I think being a creator actually makes me enjoy the experience of like watching anime or reading manga more. I think it can like get in the way sometimes a little bit. Like a lot of times with Bella and I will be watching an anime and we'll be like, oh, there was a frame where they forgot to color this thing. Did you see that? Like it'll just be very like not significant things that we recognize because like we can just point it out from doing this kind of work. But yeah, same for manga too. Like I'll be reading something and be like, oh, I can kind of like use this type of line art to draw this type of background or these kind of like hair details and stuff. Yeah, like you'll kind of sometimes hyper focus on those little things, but I think it's nice because it lets me like have a library of reference materials, and then usually when I'm working on something, I'll like take some book or whatever I have out and kind of try to learn from it while I'm drawing too. So I think that's fun too.
When I was growing up, I would read manga, and there's not too much text. So as a kid, you kind of go through it and you look through the images and you read and you turn the page, and it takes a few seconds per page, and you go through this, and then maybe in like 30 minutes or so you're through.
Yeah.
And then you have to wait for the next one, and you're like, oh, it's already finished.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it. How can people appreciate more the art and the craft that goes into this? Because you or someone else will make each of those pages and put a lot of thought, a lot of effort. How can I look at this page and kind of get a better sense for, oh, the illustrator, the mangaka thought about this, or they made this in this way to communicate something, which if I just look at a glance, I might completely miss.
Well, I think the main way to recognize that is if you just try to make a manga yourself and then you're like, oh, dang, this is like way harder than I thought. Like the people who draw these like make it look so much easier, but it's really hard to make a manga. It's a lot of time and a lot of work. So I think I really started appreciating anime and manga more just from seeing like how much like work and dedication it takes to just make like one volume of something or like one episode of an anime or something like that. It's just really a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people who are really into this kind of stuff will also recognize like the craftsmanship because yeah, a lot of people just really enjoy like collecting manga or like watching anime in general or like appreciating it. And I see a lot of accounts online where people will share things and be like, wow, look at the way that this person drew this thing. It's like really amazing. So I think there's a lot of people who appreciate the craft in that way
when
too.
You go into the communities.
Yeah.
They do. Maybe the general public like myself a little less so, but it's a shame because it is a very cool artwork that you and many others work on, and that is a tradition of Japan.
Yeah, but even if like the general like readership is still enjoys it, then I think it's still worth it. So even if they're not thinking more deeply about like the craft or whatnot.
Are there some general things like, for example, I notice in some of these scenes you don't show the character's eyes, which otherwise are generally the most expressive part of their face. Does this, for example, is this a technique that has a specific name that is meant to convey a certain emotion?
So for this specific character, they are the CEO of this idol company where they're doing the Battle Royale game. And I wanted to conceal their identity until a later part in the story where they kind of reveal who they are and what they're about, basically. And that makes that moment more dramatic. Yeah, it's this page. Because you're like, oh, we're finally like, you kind of have a feeling who they are, but now it's kind of like, oh yeah, now they show themselves to everyone. And it's kind of also like revealing their intentions in a way that they're okay with like these killings or murders or whatever happening. So I think it makes the moment more dramatic. So yeah, you can like obscure things or people or details if you want the reader not to think about it too much yet, and then reveal it later to add more of a dramatic effect.
There's another thing I noticed on this page, which in Japan is completely normal and makes perfect sense. But if you read the translated version, you might not pick up on this. You've got ta ta ta, which the katakana, which I imagine is here indicated to make the footstep sounds.
Yes.
These are usually not translated, right? When you have the English version.
They try to translate them, but it's very hard because there's actually not a lot of automatopoeias in English. And I think a lot of people don't realize that until they try to draw a comic and they're like, wait, what kind of sound can I use to like translate a footstep, like just step? Like that, there's no automatopoeia for it, right? Like,
Japan has so many, right?
And Japan has so many, so it's very easy to write sound effects in Japanese, but it's very hard to translate them. So yeah, I can find that to be a bit of a struggle to figure out like what to put.
Yeah, you have the mirror, pachi, pachi, pachi.
Yeah.
The camera shutter. Interesting. You work at the studio, but you also work from home. You brought a magazine here that kind of talked about you and Belle's home studio.
Yes.
And I think before we started recording, I don't remember on which page. And before we started recording, you talked about these setups as being something specific for a manga, like the mangaka desk. Can you tell us about this and why is it arranged in this way?
Sure. Yeah. So Belle and my desk are sakuga desks, which are traditional Japanese animation desks where they would have a lot of shelves and like a lot of spaces to put like papers and stuff that you would use to create animation. And they also have a light table underneath. So that way you can trace when you have to draw an animation because you want to see the frames, the other frames of the animation underneath. So you would turn on this light table so you can see all the other parts and see how the character would move basically. Unfortunately, we don't really use the light tables that much. I might start using it more for my manga soon to like kind of trace more cleanly my line art. But yeah, these were traditionally used in like pretty much all anime studios a while ago when everyone still worked traditionally on paper. It's not as common anymore because a lot of people will now create anime digitally. And the studio I go to now, Studio Mother, also, they mainly fully work digitally. Like everyone's working on tablets, or for me and Belle, it's like iPads. So yeah, you don't really see these kind of desks as much anymore, but we were lucky enough to get some. So we kind of set up our home studio based around them.
You mentioned working on iPads. Are there specific apps for mangaka or anime illustration, or are they just general design apps?
Yeah, so the one software that's pretty much used, like standardized in Japan, is Clip Studio Paint. That is also a Japanese-made software that you can basically do any of the creation process on, like animation, manga, illustration. You can pretty much make anything in there. And there's other software too that people use for like compositing and things, like Adobe After Effects or things like that. But for the actual creation of the drawings, it's mainly just Clip Studio Paint is the main one.
So many details, so many things to dive into. But I want to talk a bit more about now yourself and your own kind of the manga world in Japan. There are so many genres. It seems like you are into some specific. You mentioned Yuri. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And you also, before we started recording, mentioned working on some like doujinshi related work. Can you maybe explain those genres and maybe the main categories that people can find out there and how different they are?
Yeah, sure. So I already explained what Yuri manga is a little bit, but it's basically another title for girls love manga, which is manga that usually focuses on the romantic relationships between girls, basically. So it can be any kind of plot line from there. Like it can be a fantasy or a slice of life, like romantic comedy, anything like that, as long as that's kind of the main focus of the story or the characters or kind of what's going on in the plot. And for doujinshi can also be any like kind of contents. Doujinshi just means like self-published work, basically. So that can be any genre, any series. It can be original or fan art. It doesn't matter. It just has to be some kind of self-made contents. And usually it will be printed as well to be sold at events like Comic Market and things like that. So ever since I've been in Japan, I've been really involved in the doujinshi scene. And I usually do sell my work in like the Yuri genre category. So Comic-Con is divided into different genres as well. So there will be like people over here making Yuri manga. There will be people over here doing original illustrations. There will be people over here making like keyboards or something like weird. I don't know. Like it can be literally anything.
So Comic Market is a kind of the shortcut how everyone talks about it here.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're able to do this genre and you do mostly this for your work, can you equally do like another genre? Like if you had to suddenly tomorrow draw like pages of, let's say, the next One Piece chapter, is this something you can easily adapt to, or is it like, oh, this is different techniques, different styles, I need to study some things first?
Most anime you can, because it's pretty standardized. I would say One Piece would be quite difficult because it has a very, very specific style for that series. So I think I would struggle a bit to adapt my style to something like One Piece. But in general, like for my anime work, a lot of the styles are pretty standardized, where it's basically semi-realism with some deforme where they draw the characters in like a certain style, like make their eyes bigger, like draw the hair a certain way or whatever. But it still works on the same kind of like semi-realism-ish spectrum. So as long as you can draw that kind of thing, you can pretty much adapt your style and draw whatever kind of style you need to. And yeah, sometimes there's certain series that are a bit weirder to draw, but I've drawn more like kind of cartoony or like non-anime looking things before as well. Like we just finished like an anime portion on a show called The Amazing Digital Circus, which is actually a 3D animated show, but they had us do a 2D anime portion. So that was a way more like kind of Western cartoony looking style, but with like a bit of an anime flair. So that was really interesting to do.
Yeah, I briefly looked that up this morning. I had never heard of it. And then I saw the pilot episode has like 320 million views on YouTube. So you got to work on one chapter of this that is in anime style specifically.
Yes, yeah.
That's super cool. How do opportunities like this arise when you're here in Japan? You came here because you wanted to continue your career. You've now been working at the studio. You've been doing your own work. And you still do freelance work.
Yep.
What kind of opportunities can you get when you're actually here physically present in Japan that you can't when you're outside of Japan?
Yeah, so it is actually possible to freelance like to like companies in Japan. Like I do know there are some people who are working in Japanese anime overseas, for example. But I think you're going to limit your opportunities a lot because there really is a lot dependent in Japan on networking and who you know and things like that. And usually people want to work with those that they know and are here rather than people who are overseas and they don't really know if they're going to get a good result or not, you know? So I think being here is really important just for that, like that reason alone for doing this kind of work. And of course, like I said, being involved in the communities and things. And as for my own job opportunities, I mean, a lot of them just come in through the company I'm working at. And that's pretty much it. So I don't really have to like go out there and try to find a bunch of opportunities. They usually come to me just through my work. But I will also sometimes get job offers through social media. So I do post a lot to like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, things like that. And sometimes I'll just get a message and be like, hey, are you interested in working in this thing? And if it's an interesting project, then I will sometimes do that too. But yeah, it really just depends.
You brought up the mangaka community in Japan a few times throughout our conversation. It seems to be like a great place for people to get feedback, to exchange, to meet other mangaka. Is this mostly online based, or are there regular meetups besides Comic-Con?
So there are a lot more comic markets other than Comic-Con too. Comic-Con is the biggest one that most of like the very well-known artists and things like people like that go to. But there is also like smaller events where I think it is a little bit easier to meet and talk to people, because Comic-Con can also be a bit hectic since there's so many people and there's so much going on. You don't really have time to talk to individual artists as much. You can a little bit, it depends, but like the very popular artists you pretty much can't really talk to because they're just too busy selling their things, and like they'll be sold out by noon and then leave the event a lot of times. But yeah, there's a lot of other smaller comic markets that you can go to, like Komishiya, which is mostly based on original works. It's also in Tokyo, big site. And that one is a lot more like kind of calm than Comic-Con, I think. So you can, if you want to go and meet the artists and talk to them a little bit more. You can also go talk to manga editors there and show them your work and get feedback, which I think is really helpful there too. So yeah, I think taking advantage of those events and trying to participate is really like a good thing.
You've now accumulated quite a bit of a following as well on social media. People know your work, people have interacted, you share your chapters, or you did share when you were publishing it on a regular basis. What's it like for you as a mangaka now, maybe to go to a convention like this and you meet people that come specifically to kind of see your work and interact with you as a mangaka, whereas perhaps a few years ago when you would come, you would seek out their advice and seek out their expertise?
I mean, of course, that's always like a lot of fun. Sometimes I'll meet people that have been following me for like years and years because I've been posting my work online for a very long time. And yeah, that's always very fun to see. Like I always, of course, appreciate it when people come all the way to my booth to come pick up my things, especially at an event as hectic as Comic-Con, because there's so many people and so many artists there. So I'm always happy that people take the time to come see me or pick up my things. And now even recently I have some Japanese customers or like people I've met. I wouldn't say customers, it's more like just people going to visit Comic-Con, and people who are fans of like the art and stuff would come to my table as well from time to time and keep picking up my stuff or picking up my new things that I have. So that's always like really nice as well.
So what are some of your upcoming projects? What can we expect from you in the next year or so?
Yeah, so my next event is Summer Comic-Con. So I'm going to be selling this new manga that we've been looking. I'm going to be selling the physical edition of this in Japanese. So I'm very excited for that. That's going to be in August. So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm already almost done drawing the pages. So I'm going to finish that up, get the cover drawn, and then also submit that to be printed.
What's it called? Can we know? Do you have you decided on a name already for?
Yes, I have a Japanese name. It's called Yotsuki no Tururira, which means like Yotsuki is like night, moon, and then Tururira means like it's like an onomatopoeia for like sucking because it's a vampire manga.
Oh.
But it has a kind of cute, like lyrical feeling as well. So that's the title of the manga. It's really hard to translate into English.
Well, yeah, good luck if you ever want to translate that to English.
But yeah, it's fine.
Any big dreams of yours that you have for the future? Like if you could envision your mangaka career in the next few years, any kind of project you'd like to work on, or maybe any pre-existing manga or anime that you'd like to participate in?
Well, my main dream for years is to get a original manga serialized. So I'm still working on that. And the way I'm doing that is just by making a bunch of one-shots and like showing that to publishers and getting feedback and things like that. So that's the main thing. I am focusing on that now, and that's also one of my new one-shots. So I have an idea already for the next one too. So I'm just kind of like trying to make as many short stories as possible so that I hope one like editor will be interested and want to take it on for their magazine is my hope.
And so then they would give you like a publishing contract, let's say for Idol Royale, and say like, we want this in a 10-part edition, and you get a contract to make the next 9 of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, I hope that some people will get to read your work soon at the upcoming manga at the next Comic-Con, and your many more the many more ideas you have.
Yeah.
Linnea, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Do you feel like we covered your work pretty well as a mangaka? Are there some aspects that we didn't really get to talk about that maybe you would have liked to share or clarify about your work?
No, not in particular. I don't think we got a chance to talk about the boards.
That's true.
So we could mention that briefly, but
so you
that's
have
more related to my anime work.
Storyboard here, which is true, was kind of buried under the many interesting pages we had in front of us.
There's so many things.
It says here on the title, V Shoujo Project Blue Econte, or Econt. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Can you tell me about this specific project and what this document here is?
Yeah, sure. So these are storyboards that I made for a PV for V Shoujo when they released their first generation of Japanese talents. V Shoujo is a VTuber agency for those who don't know. So this PV was for the new talents to be showed off, basically. So this is a 30-second econte, which means storyboard, where you just kind of lay out how the sequence of the animation will go, essentially. So yeah, this project I got to do storyboards and direct on, and also do keyframe direction. So it was a very enjoyable experience. Belle also did character designs on it as well. And it ended up going really well, luckily. And we ended up having this PV up on the Onoden board in Akihabara, which was a huge dream come true of mine, because I've always wanted to have like my art up on a big billboard, especially in having in a place like Akihabara that's like the center of the anime and manga world, was like a very big milestone for me. And it made me feel like I've really like progressed in my art career as well. So yeah, that's probably one of my biggest recent achievements as well, and something I really enjoyed doing.
This storyboard here seems to be in a very specific format. I see 4 columns, right? Kato, Game, Nayo, and Byo. Is this standardized? Every time you have to do a storyboard, it's kind of in this format for a Japanese company? Yeah,
for Japanese anime, this is the standard storyboard format. Almost all anime will be storyboarded in this type of format. So every anime project I've worked for other studios, it will pretty much always be in this format as well. And I think it's pretty obvious, but the left side gamen is just the images that will show in the animation. Next to that, you'll have the script or like the description of what's happening. And then you'll have like how long each cut is, basically.
And this is how it gets done.
Yep.
From start to finish.
Exactly.
And then shown on a big billboard in Akihabara.
Yep.
So maybe if some of you are listening and visiting Akihabara in the near future, there may be more of your projects up there sometime.
I hope so. That's what I'm hoping in the future.
And a lot more exciting visuals to see.
Yeah.
Linnea, thank you so much for sharing your insights into your work as a mangaka and animator here in Japan. It was super interesting for me. I'm going to have to kind of go through more of the material you brought with you and do some studying, and maybe one day I'll be able to draw at least one character by myself.
Yeah, do it.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.